No real advantage to us. It's irrelevant to me. Canada would love it. Canada wants it. They need it because we don't need Canada product. That's the thing. You know, I want to be a nice person, but we don't need. I want to build the cars here, not in Canada.
So much happening. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Creighton, broadcasting to you live from a fairly mild day here in the Ottawa area. When we come back, I've got a lot to discuss with you this morning. So we'll be back in mere moments.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
And we are doing it live. Thank you for joining me today. Before we get started, I want to thank you for subscribing yesterday. And we're trying to do everything possible to raise awareness about the absolute essentiality, if I could use that word, the essential need for you to like and subscribe to the station. Please do it now and share this station with your friends and family. It's so much appreciated because if we don't grow, we get the thumb put on us from YouTube. And you know, as we alluded to, we're fighting a lot of things here. And of course we are fighting Mark Carney's censorship. And that's one of the things we are trying to fight back. So what are we facing here in Canada? Before we get into the program, we've got censorship and surveillance bills coming before us in just under 2 weeks. We have Donald Trump saying the USMCA doesn't matter. We don't need Canada. We have Mark Carney in China today. Thank God Premier Scott Moe from Saskatchewan is with him. And we'll get into that later. We have the wars continuing throughout the world in Ukraine. We have the threat of war in Iran. We have whatever is going on in Venezuela. I haven't quite figured it out yet. And I don't think anybody has, except I'm not going to say Donald Trump knows exactly what's going on. I think there's a plan here, but I'm not sure it's going according to plan, is what I'm saying. We are living in a very dangerous world. There's more flashpoints going on right now. There's more unrest, more areas of potential conflict than there have been in over a century, and probably ever in the modern world. We are so close to a potential third world war. I've been saying this now for a year and a half, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And despite the fact that Donald Trump is talking about himself as a president of peace, I'm really not seeing that being translated into reality when there's always a threat of another conflict going on. So we'll be talking about these things today. I encourage you to not fall into the propaganda groove and to just unquestionably accept and parrot the talking points of whomever you think is always right. Because in a rapidly changing environment like we are into today, a global environment, I'm not talking about climate change, I'm talking about the interaction between countries. Nobody really has a grasp on what's going on all the time. And there is so much distraction. And while the distraction is going on, we aren't focused on what's really important sometimes, are we? Which is losing our free speech in this country. And I see people are starting to talk about these bills that Mark Carney has put in front of Parliament. It's largely been groups like the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, stations like mine, other stations that are concerned about losing their free speech. There's huge distraction, so we don't talk about that. So, we're talking about everything but at times, and yet we're on the precipice of losing our free speech. I have to say that every episode, because it is the most important thing right now, next to slipping into the chasm of a third world war. And that could happen so rapidly. These things never happen according to anyone's plan. The First World War was not supposed to be a First World War. Remember that. It was an isolated conflict between Serbia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And it was supposed to be settled in isolation and locally. But one thing literally led to another. And because of the massive system in Europe that time of alliances, when one country moved towards war, another country moved against them, and so on, until it became a European and then a global war within literally 4 weeks. Did Britain think it was going to be involved in the First World War in June 1914? Absolutely not. Public opinion was completely against the war. The government itself was saying there's no way Britain wants to get involved in a European conflict. It's going to hurt trade, which, of course, was the basis, the foundation of British wealth. At that time, the pound was supreme. £1 for $5 at that time. The economy was run out of London. Did they expect to get involved in a major conflict that would engulf the world? No, absolutely not. This is why we have to be on guard against this. So I want to play the rest of that Donald Trump. And this is, of course, Donald Trump in Dearborn, Michigan, talking cars. And guess who else is in the U.S.? Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who is trying desperately to keep the tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. So why? Canadian EVs die a little slower than they are already? Well, and we'll get into that later as well. But here's Donald Trump. Here's the whole clip I have.
USMCA. Well, I can. It expires very shortly. Yeah. And we could have it or not. It wouldn't matter to me. I think they want it. I don't really care for it.
So it might go away. So you're not getting rid of
no real advantage to us. It's irrelevant to me. Canada would love it. Canada wants it. They need it because we don't need Canada product. That's the thing. I want to be a nice person, but we don't need. I want to build the cars here, not in Canada. We used to build cars in Canada. Now the Canada cars, the Canadians are moving here to build cars. Same thing with Mexico. Same thing with Japan. Japan's paid us billions and billions of dollars for the privilege of making cars here and selling cars.
So Doug Ford is fighting to keep the tariff on Chinese EVs. And as long as that tariff is on Chinese EVs, China will maintain a tariff on canola. It's important to know this. Just like cotton was once the cash crop of the South, just like corn is the cash crop of the United States, canola is the cash crop of Canadian farmers. They lose canola, farmers will go bankrupt. And that's what the tariff is putting on Canadian farmers. It's been part of the war on agriculture. I'm encouraging Prime Minister Mark Carney to do the right thing and get that tariff lifted from Canadian canola. Thank God Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe is with Mark Carney. This is very interesting to me. Doug Ford is not accompanying Carney to China. Premier Scott Moe from Saskatchewan is. Scott Moe wants that tariff lifted because he is fighting for Saskatchewan and farmers all across Western Canada who grow canola. And he knows how important this is to the survival of Canadian agriculture. When all else fails, Canadian farmers can rely on canola to save their economic day. I cannot overemphasize that. For those of you who say, well, they'll find something else, that's just like saying, well, we'll find another way to get our oil to Eastern Asian markets without a pipeline or without tankers doing it. There must be some other way. No, there's no other way currently for Canadian farmers to guarantee themselves economic viability when all else fails. And you know, with farms, things can fail in a catastrophic way. So, but here's Doug Ford begging and pleading.
The Chinese government wanting to dump cheap Chinese parts and cheap vehicles here. So I'm absolutely 100% dead against this. I have not talked to the Prime Minister. I will speak to him and tell him our concerns. And this is nothing against the folks in the canola business or soybean. We have a thriving soybean business here too. So it's not about them. I'm protecting Ontario, the 500,000 jobs in the auto sector. That's what I'm focused on.
Well, the thriving soybean industry, as Doug Ford likes to describe it, is not going to replace canola oil. Seed oils are a very important part of the world diet, the global diet. Some people object to that. Some people don't think that's the way it should be, but that's the way it is. And with all of the problems Canadian farmers have faced with the Liberal government's war on agriculture, from regulations to tariffs on fertilizer from Russia, from everything they have to do, from the CFIA going to an ostrich farm and massacring every healthy ostrich there, to everything this government has done to make life miserable and difficult for farmers, we need this tariff lifted. And that's absolutely essential. Before I forget, you notice the poster behind me. We're going to get a larger one of that because I always forget this. We're going to give you that poster plus some of these trigger stickers. We will send those in the mail to the first person that sends me your picture with Stand on Guard merchandise. That's our plan. So please get that picture to me today, and I promise we'll send you that. We're going to get a larger version of this poster, and that's going to be available in the merchandise as well. I know a lot of you have remarked that's your favorite picture that we do. So I thank you for that. Now, before Mark Carney got on the plane and went to China, and by the way, I don't envy Mark Carney here. It's been described as walking a tightrope, and it's very true. He knows he's going to face tremendous backlash from not just Doug Ford, but Ontario if he lifts the tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. Yeah, he knows that. But he's put himself in that difficult position. And he's right down the middle. But I find it interesting, as I said, that Doug Ford's not on the trip with him. Scott Moe is. So what does that mean? I think it potentially means Mark Carney's going to side with Scott Moe on this. And whatever it takes to get justice for Canadian farmers, I'm all for. And that's where we have to go with this because we have so many problems. I just want to play another clip from my interview with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, because he talks about why electronic vehicles are not sustainable anyway. They're going out of business. The plants are going out of business. They're laying off people. So why do we want to keep this tariff on them. Well, all right, we'll get to it here. Here we go. And of course, boomers just love Mark Carney. That was his largest constituency, I think, in the last federal election. But
yes,
before I forget, I want to talk about EVs, because I don't think anyone is more eloquent about the idiocy of the EV market. And I'm trying to find this. Yes, stop the EV handouts. Wonderful idea, Dan. And we've had EV handouts for so many years, and I had to laugh at Doug Ford this week. He finally seemed to realize that, well, maybe he should be siding with the Conservatives on a couple of issues anyway. And now he's saying, yeah, we need a pipeline. So when Doug Ford is not disposing of Crown Royal or other kinds of whiskey, just pouring it out in these theatrical performances, he used to, of course, stand next to Justin Trudeau and then Mark Carney at all of these electric vehicle plants in Ontario, proudly beaming about how they were subsidizing these plants with billions of dollars of taxpayer money. Meanwhile, the plants are closing or they're laying off virtually all of their employees. Now, why is this scam going to continue, or can we get out of this?
I think we're out of it because they're going bankrupt, and companies like Ford, GM, Mercedes, but most importantly, the ones that are building here have decided they can't continue, or they're prepared to pack up and go to another jurisdiction. Wife works in Brampton. The Bramalea plant is not going to be an EV plant. I'm not more than 4 kilometers here from the Ford plant. It's supposed to be an EV plant now, building F-250s and higher, and maybe the Navigator. So, look, these companies aren't ridiculous. They know where the public is at. And short of people who like to mooch and buy these things because they can get a few $1,000 off it, without the mooching, without the grifting, without the subsidies, no one wants these things. These are like a bad smell that just keep hanging there. And I say that not to be disrespectful of the technology, but the technology falls short. It's costly. It's dangerous. It's not made in Canada. And what it's made with is far more damaging to the environment than the very environment they're trying to protect by virtue signaling the idea that they're somehow aspirationally doing something good for the economy. But we've really, and I don't know it. We've pissed up the rope $50 billion. You've made commitments and you've lost money, and these things have gone bankrupt. And Lion to Northvolt. To the amounts of money that has been spent and earmarked and given to companies to go build at factories that no one wants. What are we going to do in St. Thomas with the Volkswagen plant? Volkswagen's $12.5 billion cash short right now. So what are we going to do? Turn it into a tennis court? Maybe turn it into, I don't know, making a battery, electric battery storage? Who knows what we're going to do? The reality, I think, for all of us is that we've gone through this terrible experiment of over the past 10 years, ignoring people who've been in this business a long time, not just me, and both automotive and energy, and realizing this is going to wind up in a really, really bad situation, in which we're going to basically usher away the internal combustion engine, the automotive sector here in Ontario, and we're going to trade it away, Doug Ford, for a few magical beans.
Can't really say it any better than that. And I think what Dan is saying there is that this is not working now. So we're not going to encourage people to buy these white elephants simply by discouraging them to buy cars from China. And by the way, I want to show this to you because I saw a story yesterday. In fact, I was on a radio show talking about this. London School Board wants to ban George Orwell's works, including 1984. Now, I thought immediately, oh my God, is this the Ontario government at work? No. You can blame the Doug Ford faux conservative government for a lot of things, but one thing apparently you can't blame them for is this idiotic idea of taking 1984 off the shelves of school libraries, which they intend to do in London, Ontario. The Pope had something to say about how this world resembling 1984.
Painful to see how, especially in the West, the space for genuine freedom of expression is rapidly shrinking. At the same time, a new Orwellian-style language is developing, which, in an attempt to be increasingly inclusive, ends up excluding those who do not conform to the ideologies that are fueling it.
And that, of course, comes right back to stop liberal censorship, because that's where this country is going rapidly. Now, we really want to talk about this issue to me, because I've said several times that Aboriginal title is insanity. And it basically is the same sort of toxic philosophy that ruled Germany in the 1930s and 40s, where there was a special status based on race. And the people could occupy somebody else's house, land, or apartment on the basis of their race being superior to the other person's race. That's what Aboriginal title is all about. It's racial superiority. It's naked racism. But here's the kicker. Here we have Mark Carney yesterday meeting with so-called First Nations groups. And we'll just watch this.
How was the meeting?
It was very good. It was very good. It was excellent.
What did you discuss?
We discussed many things. Many things. A lot about conservation, a lot about opportunities, partnership. We're still working on this, aren't we?
The tiger ban is not partisan legislation.
All right. Chief Marilyn Slett. She comes on here. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to pause it several times because she's representing something called West Coast First Nations or Coastal First Nations. It's not even a real First Nations group. Here it is. Coastal First Nations is an activist group. They have no pipeline veto. Actually, no Native group, legitimate or not, has a veto on the pipeline. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has pointed this out several times, and good on him for doing it. Yes, we consult with the First Nations, but they do not have a veto on stopping the pipeline. This Coastal First Nations group is not even representing real First Nations people. It's an activist group that receives a large part of its funding from American sources. And so why is Mark Carney consulting with these people? And listen to this incredible story. And this is what drives me absolutely crazy about the way Canada is structured today. Because we actually give these people the time of day to suggest that they somehow have a right to stop progress, business, construction, industry in Canada because they don't want it, because they're fine. They're getting subsidies from the Canadian government, and they're getting funding from American interest groups and American corporations that don't want Canada to succeed. And that's what's going on here. They don't represent real First Nations people. They don't give a damn about First Nations people who would benefit from a pipeline being built. They're in this game for themselves. They always are. Especially activist groups like this. But let's listen to what this woman has to say. Because if this doesn't make your blood boil about how incredibly stupid Canada can be, I don't know what will.
Reiterate that anytime there is a discussion about our territories, that we need to be in the room. And that it is very important to us that the Prime.
Every time there's a discussion, she needs to be in the room. You represent nobody except your own selfish self-interest. Yeah, you can make yourself up like you're an Indian chief or a First Nations chief, but you don't represent a single damn person.
Prime Minister see our territories and understands our concerns. And that is why our leadership invited him to sit and meet with us directly. So today we heard directly from the Prime Minister that his government will seek our free, prior and informed consent regarding any proposed projects in our territories, and that we will co-develop a transparent process moving forward.
Okay, why would you want to consult with this woman and her phony group at all? She's already telling you, we're not going to move on this issue. We don't want your pipeline. We don't want prosperity for First Nations people. We don't want prosperity for British Columbia or Canada. We're in this for our own interest. But you'd better get our approval, or else. This is called blackmail.
We are looking forward to partnering with the federal government to help facilitate projects in our territories that support sustainable economic development and marine protection. We also made our positions very clear and reiterated those positions around our stance regarding the oil pipeline, and that has not changed. Coastal First Nations, along with Lax Kw'alaams and the Haisla Nation, oppose any project that proposed to bring oil tankers to the North Coast.
Okay, no, that tanker ban will be sustained because this activist says so. Not representing anybody but herself and other people within the activist group. No, you're not going to bring tankers to the west coast of Canada. We say so. It is absolutely beyond reason why CTV News is even putting this person on their station, on their newscast. Do they not know the facts? Do they not know that even if she was a legitimate representative of First Nations people, she does not have a veto over the construction of a pipeline? It will proceed whether she likes it or not. And that's called a sovereign country. We cannot be held hostage by any groups pretending to be representing interests that somehow supersede those of Canadians, real Canadians, citizens of all races, all ethnicities, all origins, and who are all, or should be, but are not in this country, should be equal under the law.
We reiterated that there is no technology that can clean up an oil spill at sea, and that it would take just one spill to destroy our way of life. We shared our reliance on a healthy and intact ocean and our determination to protect the ocean and the ecosystem that we rely upon. And it's a reliance not just on coastal First Nations, but Canadians and British Columbians. The Hecate Strait is known as the fourth most dangerous body of water in the world and experiences wildly unpredictable weather and extremely dangerous conditions. And we shared that, and we talked about that, our leadership behind us here and our hereditary leadership. We had many people with us in the room to bring that message forward. The tanker ban is not partisan legislation. It is the result of 50 years of consultation and engagement.
The tanker ban is not partisan legislation. What a package of BS that is. Yeah, it's far left partisan legislation, pandering to people like you who have really no interest in Canadians, British Columbians, or even First Nations people.
with our coastal communities. And it is foundational to keeping our coast healthy and our economy strong. We all have aunts and uncles and grandparents that have been a part of different inquiries along the coast. I read, I reflect and I pick up the West Coast oil ports inquiry when the Andrew Thompson Commission was, in Namu, where we had some of our people there talking about why, we feel the way we feel about oil tankers on the coast, and why it's, detrimental to our values and our way of life. One of our elders, had said he did his testimony all in the Helsik language, and he was translated by Ed Newman. And he talked about the one oil spill would finish us. And, we have not deviated from that position at all, and it really does carry forward the work that we do. We made it clear to the Prime Minister, Carney, that we would always support the oil tanker moratorium, and we called on him to support it, to protect and grow our sustainable economy that we have built on the North, Central, and Haida. And Gagwis will talk about.
Oh, I can't listen anymore. But here we are, a sustainable economy. BC is going to be a ghost town because of Aboriginal title and because of fools who suggest you can have a sustainable economy even if it means the complete destruction of the energy sector in Canada. And that, my friends, is what is coming because of cheap Venezuelan oil and the inability, if the federal government does not see the light on this, the inability of the federal government to get a pipeline built in time. I want to show you an article I did yesterday because I'm quite proud of this. Quite proud of this. I'll read a bit from it. This is from Blaze Media, which I submit articles to every month. I'm very proud to be part of this media outlet. This is Glenn Beck's Oregon. My headline was not half as good as this. I really like that headline, Crude Awakening. I'm just going to read a bit of this. I encourage you to have a look at this article on Blaze Media. Canada has exactly the kind of oil the United States needs, but when it comes to investing in the infrastructure to move it, America's ally to the north is beginning to look at as risky and as politically hostile as Venezuela. The Dan McTeague of Canadians for Affordable Energy tells a line reflects a perverse governing philosophy towards the country's energy abundance. Keep it in the ground. Canada's self-inflicted pipeline paralysis is eroding its position in the U.S. market, just as alternatives like Venezuelan oil come back online. Nowhere is that risk clearer than in Alberta, home to the vast majority of Canada's oil production, where years of stalled pipeline projects have left the country's most valuable energy asset effectively landlocked. Canadian oil is the same kind Venezuelan produces, heavy crude, high in sulfur, and ideal for making diesel fuel. That was something that Dan McTeague pointed out in our recent interview. Why is Canadian crude or Venezuelan crude so right for the United States? Because U.S. crude isn't good for making diesel. And diesel is foundational to industrial production. Think about it. Think about the trucks that run on diesel. Think about factories that run on diesel. Think about how diesel is necessary. Yeah, it doesn't smell quite as nice. It's a little more offensive. But diesel is what runs the economy. And it's Canadian crude that makes diesel. Now, we're going to get to your Super Chats and Rumble Rants in a minute here and your comments. But I just want to play a bit of this interview because I thought this was really good. I'm really watching a lot of Now Media. It's out of Kelowna, and I've encouraged Katie from Universal Ostrich Farms to get on this show and to talk about what happened and where she's going, because these guys really, really are good. But here they are talking about our public safety minister. I say that with a question mark, because in no other country could a guy like this, a clown like this, survive in a cabinet, let alone as a cabinet minister responsible for public safety, when he's demonstrated he's not capable in every possible way. Now he's enforcing a gun control legislation that he's admitted. He's on tape admitting that the gun control legislation is all about politics, not about public safety, and about appeasing voters in Quebec. Gary Anandasangri, yes, I said his name correctly, has been publicly humiliated as a fraudster, political fraudster, but he continues to talk, flap his gums as a cabinet minister, and I like this criticism.
Gary defending the gun grab. Let's listen in to this. And for me, like how this guy's still there is beyond me.
As an overall pilot, I believe it is successful.
The pilot, we saw just 25 firearms from 16 people. Do you consider that a failure?
What I want to just outline is the issue of gun violence is an issue that's shaken this community, Malvern in particular, but also throughout Scarborough. It's an issue that impacts Canadians across the board. The firearms compensation program, the pilot that we undertook in Cape Breton, had a very specific purpose. We wanted to test the capabilities that we have to both be able to register as well as recover the firearms that people wanted to voluntarily hand over to us. As an overall pilot, I believe it is successful. When we roll out the program in its full form in the upcoming weeks, we do anticipate much greater uptake. But as a quantitative issue, the pilot was never to test the quantitative aspect of the program. It is much more to look at the systemic issues that may occur. We were able to correct the number.
That's good. I can't even listen. $750 million for this gun grab. I think they spent $50 million already, and this is what they've got. 25 guns from 16 people, 25. And also a leaked audio call with his tenant where he said he didn't think the program was even worthwhile, and that he would make sure that his tenant was whole, and he would even give him extra money if he didn't get enough for his gun. And this guy's still in cabinet. Absolutely still in cabinet. And he also has, allegations of ties to different organizations, still in cabinet. And then the answer, and again, the media is just like, okay, that's an answer. Like it should be. Like, would he stand up to a UK journalist or an American journalist? I mean, they would go to town on this guy. The amount of money that was spent and then calling him successful. Are we losing Ian there, or what's going on? Can you hear us, Ian? Yeah.
No.
No, can you hear us now? I don't know. You might have.
Because it's completely untenable. His position is untenable. It's impossible for him.
I think that's an excellent piece. Oh, sorry. That's an excellent analysis of how incredibly inept and incompetent this minister is. Why aren't people prefacing their questions with, after what you said to your, after what was recorded about you admitting this was nothing but a political scam, how do you have the gall to stand up and even answer any questions about this issue? And what is this really about? It's part of Carney's war on agriculture. So you have no defense in this country. Farmers have no defense, even from any threat to their livelihood and their property. The government wants to make farmers defenseless so they can send the CFIA in, steal your livestock, kill your livestock, intimidate you and your family, destroy your farm, destroy your livelihood, and destroy everything you're trying to do. That's what the Carney government war on agriculture is. That's what the Trudeau government war on agriculture was. That's what it will continue to be. And that's why there has to be massive pushback against this war in agriculture and against these stupid, absolutely political gun grabs. And that's why we're cheering on Katie from Universal Ostrich Farms for the work she's going to do this year to fight the CFIA and government encroachment. And we'll have more about that tomorrow. But we've got further evidence about coastal First Nations. Producer, can we put that up? All right, this is more evidence that where the money's coming from. You know what? Jesse Ventura's got a lot of faults, but I used to love the fact, if you ever watched his conspiracy show, a lot of those were really good. And he used to always say, follow the money, follow the money. And when people are getting a lot of money from the Rockefeller Foundation, which ironically is based on the fortune of John D. Rockefeller, who was a capitalist. The Rockefeller Foundation loves to finance left-wing causes in the same groove as George Soros. That's where the money's coming from. And that's why CTV should not be interviewing anybody from this group. The Canadian government, let alone Mark Carney as the Prime Minister, should not be sitting down with this group and bargaining about the future of Canada's essential pipeline. It's not just a pipeline. I'm going to start calling it this. It's a lifeline. Pipeline equals lifeline for the Canadian economy, for the Alberta economy, for the industry of Canada and the oil sector, the energy industry in Canada. It's a lifeline because we can no longer be sure that we can just keep selling it to our chief ally to the south. That's where we are. So incredible, but I don't use this comment very often. There's the receipts, okay? There's the receipts. And that's where we are here. So we're going to have a look at your super chats and your comments. And I love this time of the week because, you know, I read your comments. And I want to tell you, I got one of the viewers the other day. I'm just going to mention her first name, Kelly. She contacted me yesterday and said, I'd like to come on your show and talk about something. And give me a call if you're interested. I gave her a call yesterday, talked to her last night. She called me back. And I said, I'd love to have you on the show because this is a show that's about what you're interested in. You as viewers, what you're interested in. Yeah. Gun grabs are for final control. Some UN countries just might be worried the U.S. is rallying countries to fight against the green scam business gangster woke takeover they thought was going accordingly. Yeah. Anyway, I was saying I'm going to have Kelly on the show next week to talk about some of the issues she wants to talk about. And I encourage, if there's anybody out there, if you've got a background that you think would be interesting, if you got issues you'd like to talk about, tell me about them. This show is about having people, real people on to discuss real issues. That's what we're doing here. Having native ancestors, I have difficulty listening to this rhetoric. Put your minds to useful research to create safe, viable ways to help our country utilize God's given resources. You know, and I got to say, I grew up on Vancouver Island, which was rich with a lot of Native or First Nations heritage and history. I grew up with friends who belonged to Haida or Kwakiutl tribes, and my heart goes out to those people because they're not being served by their chiefs. Let's have equality and let them have the opportunity for prosperity. That is absolutely essential. Now, do we have any more comments here? Well, I'm gonna have a look and see what actually has been up here. Now media is great for the conservative daily news. Yeah, I thought so too. That's why I'm encouraging Katie to go on the broadcast and talk about it. And Ice Age had no citizens. I love this comment from Ray Davis. We are Indigenous to Canada. Yeah, we all are. If you're born in Canada, you're Indigenous to Canada. Carol Danson writes, gun grabs are exactly what happened to Venezuela. Once they got the guns, the democracy died and dictatorship took over. Is this what Canadians want? A good question, Carol. Some Canadians do want this, yes. They like slavery. I'm not one of them. I'm sure you are not. There's a rumble. No more sleepovers for Doug? Yeah. And Carol responded, 100%. Carol responded to that. First Nations are also finally waking up and suing their chiefs and councils for misappropriation of funds. Hey, Ruby Black, thank you for saying that, because I have been saying this for years. And you know, the old Reform Party used to go after this issue, after the chiefs. Conservative Party today doesn't touch it because they don't want to be branded as racist for doing it, even though it's got nothing to do with racism. But First Nations, yes, they have been robbed blind by their chiefs, who are getting rich off of government money and other sources, while the people on reserves starve, are addicted, and have no future. So thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for pointing that out. Hey, David, is Katie filing a class action lawsuit against the Canadian government and CFIA? Well, we are, let's just say we'll know more about that in the next couple of weeks. I can't comment on that because that is Katie's issue to talk about. And we will have her on the show in the next couple of weeks to address that question. Let's put it that way. Indigenous tribes fought each other for land all North America. It's very true. We have this mythology in Canadian history that all of these First Nations groups were just peace-loving, non-violent, opposed to any kind of conflict or wars. And of course, that was absolute nonsense. They were killing each other, fighting over land, fighting over resources. Of course they were. Let's stop idealizing people on the basis of their ethnicity or race. That's what this is all about. You know, First Nations around me got a huge payout last fall into this year, some over $250,000. Yeah, Majestic 12 writes. Oh, is this? Yeah. Harpreet Singh is an Indian. Rick from Six Nations is an Indigenous person. Well, where's this? When will all the Marxist ideology that is the undercurrent in Canadian politics going to be addressed? or should be, when is going to be addressed? Very, very good question. Disband CRTC and the CFI, Elections Canada, and Global Affairs Canada. Where do you begin? Yeah. Yeah, people neglect to remember the fact that they are 5% of the population. The Indians lost the war. Well, I wrote a column about that recently for Human Events. I mean, we won the war. Let's get on with life. Let's stop navel gazing about history and saying we've got to rectify all the grievances, injustices, or whatever from the past. It's now we should be worried about now the present. Let everybody share in some kind of Canadian prosperity. You know, but we are denying everybody prosperity in Canada because we want to keep the resources in the ground and because we have shut off business in this country. Yeah, okay. When is Pierre going to address the lost ballots or freedom of speech? And why would I vote for him until he does? Please help me. My friend, I have been encouraging Pierre Poilievre to address Bill C-9. Members of his caucus have been. Andrew Lawton has done a wonderful job of combating Bill C-9 and other censorship bills coming from the Carney government. I couldn't agree with you more. Pierre Poilievre needs to get personally involved. He needs to get personally involved because nothing is more important, more foundational to Canadian freedom than freedom of speech. And if we lose that, we lose everything. Prairie prospecting rights. When do reparations stop? There is no forgiveness, just graft. I see I've struck a chord here because I know a lot of you feel the same way I do. You're tired of being branded discriminatory if you say, I don't want to see people get special status, special concessions, special rights because of their ethnicity or their race. I want Canadians to be equal under the law. I want all Canadians to have equal access to prosperity. I want all Canadians to be judged the same, not because of who their ancestors or who their ancestors were, who their forefathers were, but who they are today. That's what my Canada is all about. But that's not Mark Carney's Canada. That's not the Canada we have been sold for so long. Oh, there's something about Ukraine here. Pierre Poilievre wants to send more money to Ukraine. And once again, I have been critical of that. And I'm hoping Pierre Poilievre sees the wisdom of stopping sending money to Ukraine where it's going into a black hit of Kiev or a black hole of corruption. That's where it's going. I mean, we're not going to get into too much against Pierre Poilievre because without Pierre Poilievre, there's no alternative at all. And we could be in for an election. And I think we need to encourage Pierre Poilievre to move to the right on several issues, knowing that there's vast public support for it. And Pierre Poilievre has got to start talking about the corruption in the Carney government. The corruption in the Carney government. That's what he needs to talk about. So this has been we're having a nice chat here with the people like you who watch the show, who support this show. I am encouraging you to continue to support this show. But if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe today. We need to push the subscriptions up. I want to hit 100,000 subscriptions this year or bust. That's where we have to go. Because otherwise, I'm not sure you've completed your thought here. Pierre might just be helping make Carney and Trudeau and, okay, not sure what you. Yeah, it's a recent. Yeah, Pierre Poilievre was on Vancouver Island recently because he's facing a leadership review this month. And I think he realizes to get a very good response in a great response for that leadership review, he needs to interact and understand the grassroots of the party, which are always a lot more conservative, small c conservative, than some of the people who might vote conservative in an election. So yeah, Pierre has been out and about. We'll be following the leadership review. I think he's going to win handily, because who else is going to step into his shoes right now? And we need to get rid of Mark Carney. We need to get rid of this liberal, corrupt government more than anything else. So I think it's important. But as I say every day, I'm in nobody's pocket. I'm not a propagandist for any political party, whether it's the Conservative Party or whether it's the People's Party of Canada. I am not in anybody's pocket. I will say what I think is the truth. I will speak what I think is just. I will say what I think is necessary to move freedom ahead in this country and to stop Mark Carney's censorship at all costs. And there's more people. Tamara Leach is speaking up about Bill C9. Katie Pasidney did a wonderful post the other day about Bill C9. People are realizing it finally. Is it too late? It's never too late. Where there's life, there's hope. Where there's pushback, there's the potential for victory. Hit that bell, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching today. This has been a pleasure. We're going to do this every Wednesday, by the way. We're going to look at your Super Chat, your Rumble rants, and your comments, because this is what this show is all about. It's about you. It's about what you want to talk about, and let me know. If you think I've done a half-assed job, go ahead, tell me. I've developed some thicker skin over the years. You have to do that in this business. You have to. Oh, I'm going to end it with this one. Thank you for the stream. Thank you for watching, everybody. We love you. We thank you for your support. Tell your friends and family about this station, about this channel, because we're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to hold the government accountable for what it's done to Canadians and what it plans to do with its censorship legislation. We will hold the Carney government accountable, and we're not going to stop the fight. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow. And God willing, if I can get Katie to sit down for an interview today, we're going to have a segment about what is happening with the CFIA and other projects she's working on. I know a lot of you are interested in that, and we remain committed to Katie's story on this station. Thanks for watching. God bless, and God. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I'm going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Creighton, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.